we discussed this before, and I know I was telling you, just some things that I thought about, and I know, like I said, me and you, we have a pretty good conversations about it. And I think we might have talked about this topic like prior, but we sometimes some of our conversations sometimes be kind of like revisiting things, but not necessarily all the way like relative. But it kind of made me think about something recently because like I said, we like I was telling you about my situation about being ghosted, and then we was talking about the Megan getting her husband thing, and then I was actually listening to the Brilliant Idiot podcast, and I guess they was talking about like Betty White and like how they mentioned how God, like we don't know what God did, like how like what God said, what God did. Like God could have came to us in their dreams, could have came to us in while we were sleeping, but before we passed, and we talk about that all the time as far as like
Yeah.
sometimes people being saved, like some people get saved like right before they pass, so that was kind of like the salvation point.
Mm.
And it was just something I just wanted to, I just wanted to get your thoughts on these um particular instances as far as salvation, contributions, more so like in relationships and also possession,
Okay.
so but like I said, hopefully, you're not on, I ain't gonna say camera shot, but hopefully you're not not audio shot. Like I said, it's just like
No, I'm ready, friend. I'm ready. I'm just waiting for the question. You know what I'm saying? Let me know.
all
Because
right.
I mean, it's a whole lot of concepts, right? So you think about like you bring up the concept of like being ghosted, and we talked about that before, and we've also talked about a whole lot of different aspects of salvation too, right? Saying like, what does it mean? What's the timing? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I didn't hear that podcast. I didn't hear that Brilliant Idiots podcast about Betty White, but I'm curious as to what they were talking about.
Well, there
What
was.
is it? Is
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious about what were your thoughts on it, and what kind of things did it bring up for you?
Well, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. I don't. I don't. I like. I said, I couldn't quote them verbatim, but I know they was like when they was talking about Betty White, they was just like rest in peace of Betty White. 'Cause, she died at 99,
I
and
know it's a shame.
Charlamagne was talking about how like he man she lived a good life, and um how there's a lot of like there's a few people who that passed at like at early age. And I think he talked about his idols and Charlamagne's idols, and I don't know what made. I don't think the whole concept of me saying God coming, like God could have came to us while we was like right before. I don't know if that was correlating with Betty White, but it was just the fact of like like man you lived a long life, and it's almost like that's like grace. It's like what are like kind of like the benefits of living that long, or like how do one live that long? Is it really something that is based on how we live our life, or is it more so of being healthy? Like what is that? And it just kind of like made me think about how we all kind of like we witness a lot of young folks, not just black, but a lot of how they say the good die young, and then it's like there's people that's that gets murdered at a young age. Some people that kind of just like they can like myself, people in my age bracket, my generations, we're dying from whether like medical conditions and everything. So it was just kind of like, man, salvation like so salvation just solely a matter of being protected, have like being saved, being kind of like reserved. So
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it makes me wonder about as you're saying, it makes me wonder about what salvation means to different people.
hmm
And I think, you know, a lot of our belief systems can come from a lot of different places. So, you know, you could believe something because it's how you were raised as a child, or you can believe something because of, you know, your earthly encounters. And you would imagine, if we still go back to the Betty White example, like somebody who's been on the earth for 99 years, I'm sure it has multiple different exposures to different things, different life paths, different, you know, experiences, different types of things. And so, I don't know. I mean, if I think about like what salvation is, I have to go back to like what the person's belief system is and what they will believe they will be being saved from or saved for, right? And it also raises the question as to like, okay, so if you become saved, we haven't defined that yet. If we think about what that means, if you become saved, is it better to have lived your whole life that way? Or is it okay to get all the way to the end of your life and receive an invitation to whatever formal salvation we're talking about? I think, you know, we're talking about in the Christian aspect, you know, God saying, okay, you know, save you from, you know, a fiery spiritual death. But I don't know. It's such a big concept. I think my understanding, though, you know, I think about salvation, I mean, it's free, right? Like, it's an invitation. Hey, you know, you can be saved from X, Y, and Z. But I think your life is predicated on what you're being saved from. Like, in this life, do you have a refuge? Do you have spiritual peace? Do you have, you know, a certain level of peace and believing that there's a different level, right? Is that your salvation? Or can you live your life as how you choose, however you want? You know, you live a long life, you just out here chilling, do what you want to do, believe what you want to believe, or not believing anything, like our agnostic friends, right? And then at the end of the day, you get an invitation from God to salvation, and you're like, well, what is this? What is this value, right? Because if you don't believe in it, if you don't have the same beliefs or concepts about salvation, then an offer is not going to mean a whole lot to you.
Yeah, I understand, and that was the thing, like, because even with that, you know, I think we even had a recent conversation as far as like certain things meaning different to other people. So it's like, at what point is certain words and certain, you know, blessings or benefits universal? Like salvation, you know, by dictionary, it just means, you know, preserved and deliverance from harm, ruin, or loss. And then you have the theology version, which talks about, you know, deliverance from sin and its consequences. And, you know, not to, you know, knock anybody else's faith base, but again, you know, that's, you know, that could be like Christian, you know, Christian aspect, like you mentioned, like, you know, but we, you know, for me, I only learned about salvation through, you know, my upbringing as far as like being Christian and, you know, the Bible.
Yeah,
so is salvation, like if you're not claiming that faith or believing that type of faith, that faith of Christianity, what is salvation? Is it salvation if it doesn't correlate with Christianity? Or because, you know, like I said, what is the, like you said, what are we being saved from? And
yeah, like what's your belief system, right? Because it makes me, even as you're talking about it now, it makes me think about, if you are a person who is, say for instance, we're talking about, if we take a Christian lean, right? And you talk about the end of your life, and you just lived your life and maybe never heard of God or never had any Christian-based belief system, or you chose a different route, whatever. If you're offered like a salvation, you know, is it of any value to you? And if you do accept it, or even if you believe there's a potential for you to be offered salvation, or if you believe you're living your life in a way that's opposite of what a Christian God would believe in, doesn't that in and of itself indicate a baseline Christian belief system, like a baseline belief in creationism and who we are, and the fact that there's even an opportunity to be saved from something leads you down a whole nother road of where you have to believe in a God then. You have to believe in creationism then, right?
Sure. And 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 being that, you know, was even with that point, it was just something that I remember you actually said to me recently, and of course, we are recording, and it's no secret that's. I mean, sometimes maybe I have this ideal of being good for people. Being a good friend, being a good family member, being a good lover, and all this stuff. And I remember you mentioned something to me just maybe like our last conversation. This savior complex, right?
Hmm.
And I had to think, and I was like, maybe I do have that because I feel like, and again, it goes back again to my whole when we was having this conversation about how the roles people play as far like a lot of the looks of how people play how people's looks can help give
Oh
them a
yeah.
role.
Hmm.
So and I told you about like how like I have a soft spot for women,
Yeah.
and it's a very and especially a woman that I know is like, hey, it's not necessarily me wanting to be like, hey, everybody's hero, but it's like, hey, I'm like, it's like, if I'm someone who's having that's not really like in relationship or like in a relationship that I want to be in one, but then I have some friends who might be in relationship who might have a relationship issues. It's like I always feel like I'm protecting them because it's like, okay, if you're with me, or if you're my friend and stuff, it's like I'm here for you because it's like you don't have to put up with that. And it's like, and I always felt like sometimes like, and I think I told you this before, like anybody I'm in a relationship with, I feel like, hey, it can't get no better than me because look, I'm a man, and I know
Uh-huh.
men can be dogs, and it's like I'm not gonna say I'm the only good man out here, but it's almost like I'm an exception to like what what every other woman is used to because maybe their choice of men are wrong, and it's like, okay, they're like me being the friend zone type of guy. What
Okay, but hold on. So, a couple different things there, right? So, thinking about women's choice of men, right? So you said a few things there that I want to address. Women's choice of men, and maybe they picked the wrong person before. I mean, but them picking you could be inclusive of them picking the wrong person, and that has nothing to do with you. It could just be whatever criteria that they're using to choose could be off. And then to go back a little bit further into what you said, how we talked about the savior complex and how and what you said is, or what I think I heard you say was, you use it as a way to kind of express care and concern. But it's like, where are the edges of that, right? And I have to think about that for myself, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've actually been, doing a lot of soul work, doing a lot of shadow work, doing a lot of things to, just kind of turn over the soil in my own life. And I think that we have to be aware of personal boundaries, right? Like, even if the other people that we're dealing with don't set a boundary, where are the edges of our own behavior? Where does it cross over from being a level of care and being appropriate into doing too much, right? So one
right?
example that I heard about recently was, I've actually been looking at some tarot readers on YouTube, and I feel like it's a way of accessing a divine knowledge. I still don't know how I feel about it spiritually, but
You
I'm just using it as an example.
I'm sorry, you said pro readers.
Tarot, some people call it tarot, some people call it tarot,
Tarot.
right?
Oh,
So
tarot
card
readers.
readers, right?
Oh, tarot. Yeah, okay.
People who feel that they can use a deck of cards to assess the energies around a person, a situation, what have you, based on alignment of the sun, stars, moon, etc.
Okay.
For those who don't know.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
the reason I bring that up is because one of the reasons that I heard about recently was in regards to me and another person, or maybe another hypothetical person, because it's just a reading. And the advice was, maybe you're trying to be in a caregiver role for this person, and that's not what's needed for this relationship. So what I bring back to you is I think it's important for myself and for you and whoever else finds himself doing this to like find the boundaries, find the edges of what you're doing because everybody's not ready for your advice. Everybody's not ready for, you to speak on your opinion about their life. And everybody won't hear what you have to say for a multitude of reasons. So it's almost like touching the stove and finding out it's hot, right? It's like how many times you have to get burned by oversharing or overstepping before you say, where's my boundary?
Yeah, and you're right, and that's even the thing that a hard pill for me to swallow because
Me too.
again, what type of friend would I be if I just? I mean, like I'm not gonna say here and say I'm a complete dickhead or asshole. Where excuse my language, people, but it's like I mean, like I said, I have been in relationships where so I've been called like man, I'm a little I can be controlling, possessive, which we will get into in a second. But also like even without being in a relationship, it's kind of like nothing's like I don't want to be in everybody's business, but it's kind of like to me, I feel like everything matters. Like everything's a factor. Like how people make decisions sometimes can affect somebody else, especially someone who you're close to or friends with, because it's like sometimes when it's like you don't have to talk to your friends every day, but it's almost like your friends never fail to reach out to you when they need you or vice versa. And it's like, yeah, that's great. Be there when it matters, but it's also like, man, is that going to be the only time when we communicate? Is when you're needed.
Yeah, that depends on your criteria for friendships, right? Because I've had to have that conversation. I've ended friendships over just that. I'm like, at first I thought I maybe needed too much or thought too much, but if there were people who the only reason they came in my cipher was to need something or ask for something or want something, I had to really step back and say, am I getting my needs served from this relationship? Am I satisfied? Am I happy with what's going on? And there have been a couple of times where I had to say no, and I had to end those relationships. And sometimes depending on what you need friendship for, that can be very unfortunate. Some people just need somebody to go grab a drink with. Some people just need somebody to get a ride to the airport. That's not the kind of friendship that I want. And I'm like, well, if it's too demanding for some people for us to actually have a bond or an emotional connection, or hey, I know who I can call if I need something or if they need something, and it's reciprocal. I think we have to evaluate that. That's another boundaries issue too, right? You're like, hey, you like overstepping.
Yeah, and that goes back again to another point. What's again, for those of you who don't know, the listeners, thank you again. This is a real good friend of mine, and case in point, what you were saying before. What defines you? Like just like how you said, we have to figure out, what friendship means to us. So it's like, okay, at some point, who you say you are can be true, but then there's also like, okay, you might have other people who's out like in your circle or outside your circle who sees you like again like somebody might say like I always say, hey, I'm Blair the Cancer Care Bear, but I'm also the best friend you'll ever have because it's like I'm one of the. It's not because of me making myself available or being there, but also but more so of I can empathize and understand anything to where I do feel like, hey, it might be hurtful to me at the time, but I'm forgiving. So it's like we all want a friend who will, or someone in our life who will kind of show us that unconditional type of love at no means.
Do we though?
Well, I would.
Is that what everybody's motivated by?
Well, I would like to believe.
That brings up the question, right? Like some people don't.
Maybe I would like to believe so. But
Yeah,
but maybe I could I could be wrong, but I would like to think that hey, like I said, not everybody is Christian or whatnot, but and Jesus isn't really necessarily synonymous with Christianity, even though some people might believe it. But I'm like, okay, say if Jesus isn't real, but why wouldn't you want to be like that? Why wouldn't you want to be, be in that example? Why wouldn't you not be perfect? But why wouldn't you want to be someone who was, honored and praised like that, even though we're human beings. Jesus was a human as well. He was just a vessel. But why wouldn't you want to be viewed or looked at as a good person and a person with such high prestige or like honored, even though his own people crucified him, but he was still loved because
right. But it would depend on your value system, right? Like it would depend on what you value. Right, like if you were to say, like if we go back to your example, and you say, well, why wouldn't somebody I could be the best friend you could ever have? And while I feel like you're a great friend to me, that's because we have similar values, right?
Yeah.
So if you meet a person and the person's like, well, I value, WYZ, and you say, well, I value, DCA, the relationship's not going to match up, and what you offer them, they may not consider valuable. And I think that's why we have to. The whole purpose of our journey is to figure out who we are, what our own boundaries are, because we can be aware of how other people see us, which might definitely be in context with how we see ourselves. But the most important view is how we see ourselves, right, and how that leads us to conduct ourselves, because we can't measure everybody's value, and we're not going to be able to match everybody's values. And I think that's what makes the world go round, right? So that's why I can't ever say, well, let me back up. I don't really believe in the confidence argument, right? Some people are saying, oh, well, if you don't think that this person or that person likes you, or this person or that person thinks you're confident, then you're not confident. It's like, no, you can have self-confidence, but you don't know what that person sees as valuable. You don't know what they believe in. And you don't know if what you're bringing to the table is something that they're going to be receptive of. Which is why I don't think it's a good move to say, well, I know what I can offer you. You don't know what their life journey has been, and you don't know what they think is important.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of this clip. I don't know exactly the whole conversation. I didn't see the episode, but I know you know who Mike Tyson is. But
I do.
Yeah, I know you know who he is, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with T.K. Kirkland.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so he had mentioned there was a clip of him having an interview with Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson was telling him something to where I think he was like something to agree where he said, man, he hated himself, he wanted to like kill himself or wanted to die or something, and then T.K. Kirkland was like, oh no, you don't, no you don't, and then he kind of like snapped on him and said, hey man, who you tell me like how I feel, man, and it was just, I was like, wow, it's kind of like, you want to be positive sometimes and encouraging and tell people, no, you don't want to die, but some people might feel a way about themselves at a time and where they feel like I don't want to be here, and it's like sometimes that goes back again to overstepping of, because again, we all look at death at a negative thing, and we definitely look at suicide and doing self-harm as a negative thing. However, it's part of life where some people feel like they need to be punished, or they need to pay for maybe the sin that they did.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's just one of those things that it's like I'll be looking at paying attention to, because it's like it's almost like the older I get, the more I realize, the more grateful that I realize that I'm like certain things I don't care much about as I did, but it's also like, man, it's also a blessing where it's like, because I didn't have the worst life, I didn't have the best life, but I can't even really say that neither, because I have my own life. Like if I'm outside looking in at somebody else's life, I'm like, okay, well, I see these glamorous lifestyles of people, and I'm like, oh, that's what I aspire to have. So they probably had a better life, but then I see some people who might be going through more trauma than me, and I'm like, they have less, but I have my measuring stick too, like you would say, we either gonna match or measure, but at the same time we have to attain to our own space, ourselves, take a look in the mirror at ourselves. So
exactly, we can't measure what's in somebody else's cup like at all. That's why I think relationships are so interesting with friendships, romantic and otherwise, because it's so much that we think we know, but we can forget how limited our view is just of people and sometimes of ourselves, right? There's sometimes things within ourselves that make us who we are that we don't even know about yet.
Right.
Wherever it came from, whatever the defining feature is, which is why I think, going back to what you said before, I wanted to revisit when you had mentioned, because this has always been, it always comes up when we talk, right? It's always a crux for me, and it's so fascinating to me when you say this. But like you say, things that you, like when you give advice and things that you want to share with people because you want the best for them and you want to add value to their lives. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what I hear
Right.
when you
Right.
say that.
Right. You right.
And I'm curious about, what let me put this theory out there first. What I believe is, if we continue to do something, the reason we continue to do it is because we're getting some sort of payoff from it, right? There's something that you're getting from whatever activity you continue to engage in. So I guess I'm curious about, playing the odds, right? Like, has it been more favorable for you to say things like this that come off, maybe bossy or, maybe controlling, as a word you used earlier? Has there been a benefit, more benefit than less, to you saying that to somebody, right? Like, if you give this advice and you give this information, have you thought about it in the past and been like, well, this many times I've been like 0 for 3, you know what I mean? In terms of how this benefited me, because I'm curious as to how that keeps working. Because honestly, I feel like most people are not interested in certain types of advice if that's unsolicited.
You know what's funny? You said that. I haven't really thought about it, but I don't need much think about it, because as you asked me that, I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't know if it has made me, if it did benefit, because like I told you again, like people doesn't really like, because it only happens mainly like in like relationships, or kind of where it's more like an exchange, but it's like the reason why I do it is because like I still have to do that. Like, I'm a very encouraging person, and like I said, I see the best in people, even though I know that sometimes, like I said, some people change, some people don't. Some people gonna win, some people are not. But that would be pessimistic. But at the same time, I do feel like, hey, if I'm giving you advice, I'm not just giving you advice. And it's not always the advice that I know for sure. But like I always say, you gotta pray, gotta keep your head up, because that's what I look at. I look at, if you continue to, you know, move in a certain, if you continue to stay positive, even when you might be down, you're gonna win, because like at the same time, worrying doesn't help. So like there was this one saying I told you about this time when I was a kid. I used to have like, there was these papers that we had, like I don't know where they came from, but it was just had like different quotes, like, remember, I think there was one quote said, if you can't help but worry, remember worry can't help you. So it's like, and it's like, man, that was kind of good, and it's like, my memory isn't as good as it used to be. I mean, I still remember certain things, but I know that I think that I'm a pretty positive person. Like, but again, it goes back again to like, well, compared to who, because I'll tell you, people, like, if we're talking about relationships, romantic relationships, I can really be like, yeah, I can be selfish, but it's like, it's not because
Okay, glad you know.
I don't. It's not because I don't care. It's just because it's like, I like things done a certain way, and because to me it's like, just like I said before, I like to initiate certain things, because then it feels like if I don't initiate something and I don't want to do it, I'm gonna feel out. It's kind of wrong to kind of like, when somebody's trying to do something for you and you don't initiate it, you just like, oh, I don't want to do it right now, because it's gonna, I like my space. Like, even being in a relationship, it's like I want my quiet time sometimes. Sometimes I want my time to look at TV. Sometimes I want my time to be on the phone. Sometimes I want my time to be physical. Sometimes I want my time to do whatever. But it's like, I'm just kind of like that. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but it's.
I mean, I think that's fair, but I think it's worth considering, right? Because I hear you say, I heard the word selfish, but I wonder if it's just being more self-centered, right? Even the advice giving. Is unsolicited sharing of advice more self-centered than anything? And if so, I guess my follow-up question would be like, well, gosh, like, what degree of self-centeredness can you have and still be in a successful relationship? For example, I've been in situations where, obviously I take into account whatever personal work I still needed to do at this time. But, if my radar was off for picking the wrong person. But like I have dealt with individuals who needed something different than what I needed. And it showed up to me as self-centeredness. For example, like lack of contact when I felt like I needed it. Now, of course, we have to be careful in terms of, okay, are you being needy, or is this a really healthy relationship need? But the actual question here is like, can you, like, to what degree can you be self-centered, which we all are, and have a successful relationship? And again, circling back to your advice question, it's like, okay, well, savior complex, giving advice that's unsolicited. I mean, that's a little bit of self-centeredness, right? It's like nobody asked us. Nobody asked, right? And I understand wanting to make contributions, but I've been in that situation before, with family. I've told you about family situations and things like that. And I'm just like, wow, I've gotten burned, but I'm like, I'm the one that put my hand on the stove. Nobody asked me to do X, Y, and Z. And nobody asked you to say X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So it's like how much of what we do is to satisfy, oh, this makes me feel good. I feel like I'm making a contribution, as opposed to, let me figure out how I can best serve this other person and what their needs and bits and pieces are, what their needs are. I don't think we do that often enough.
We don't. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, man, I realized, I said, shoot, maybe I am. I mean, I'm still a great person, and maybe I'm not as, I'm not gonna say I overestimated myself, but it's like, there's been times where a relationship I was in, before, or there was a relationship I had before, and I think their mom pointed it out to me as far as like, hey, I guess sometimes like some stuff that I say, kind of like I care about, like what, maybe like celebrities do. Like I believe, like, okay, if celebrities do this, then that's what I believe. But I'm like, nah, I don't want what celebrities want. I want, I'm more like I want my credit. Like, I feel like, I guess because maybe this has a lot to do with me being the baby. Me and my brother, we're close in age, and I'll say this live here on the podcast. I don't think I ever expressed this before. But it's like this actually feels like therapy. But
yeah, right? That's what I'm telling you. We're words of affirmation people got talking out.
But I think I might name this episode that. But it's like, my you said what?
Talk therapy.
My brother, he's like me and him were both quiet, but sometimes it's kind of like, he was kind of like more popular than me, but he was kind of like the one who probably get more. I guess like I say, he was more athletic. He's I ain't gonna say he was more attractive, but maybe it was more so because of, hey, some of the girls that I might have been interested in, they was probably more interested in him because he was older. Baby. He was older, and it's like, sometimes it's kind of like my advice has a lot to do with being first. Sometimes, like, I don't, you can't really tell me anything. Like, I mean, I take advice, but it's almost like, I don't like when people tell me stuff that I already know, even though they don't know it. But it's like, I'm not just talking out my butt. When I say something, when I express myself, when I give advice, it's like, hey, I'm gonna tell you this before you tell me, or to a sense of the need of, okay, look, because it's like, I don't want people getting recognized for something that I do. Like, if somebody say, like, somebody can say something real deep, like, say it, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's like somebody personal, but it's like, look, well, I told this person that. It's like, again, I tell you about this, like, again, we're on social media. I'm very active on social media. It's not like the end all be all, but it's like, okay, I can post something. I'm posting it, but I do want some interaction. I don't really care if anyone, agrees or disagrees, but I do want some interaction. That's why I put it up there. If I wanted to keep it to myself, I would just write it in my diary, right? So if I say that, but I get no type of response, and then somebody else that might have a little bit more friends, or somebody who might be a little bit more popular, get like say the same thing, and they're getting like all this type of uh compliments and like, so, oh yeah, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, that's why I ain't get no type of love with that, because again, it's like the need, like we all have, well, I ain't gonna say we all, let me re revert, like reword and redirect myself with saying everybody, but um I have a need to feel appreciated, a need to feel loved, and I
Yeah.
got a lot of love growing up, but I think it was just because, again, like, I'm quiet, I'm low key, but sometimes just like I'm not trying to be living in nobody else's shadow, and sometimes like the lack of attention almost feels that way because I see everything, and I notice
Yeah.
everything, so it's like maybe that has a lot to do with it. But
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it could be so many different things, right, Brenda? It's wild because there's so much there, right? Like the first thing I think of is I think that many of us, oh, I'll just speak for myself, two people. Many of us would like love, appreciation, and all those things. But I think the problem comes in with the second part of what you said, and I think we compare it to how much somebody else gets in comparison to how much we get, and that's when it turns into an issue. Because it makes me think about how all attention is not good attention,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And we talk about the nature of people in general, right? Like a lot of times people are just shallow. They like things for what they like for. And I'm not trying to be judgmental or critical. I just think that we as people in general, we pick and choose what we want, and that's just the nature of life. I listened to this sermon one time so many years ago, but it stuck with me. It was Darius Daniel, Sean's Daniel,
oh yeah, I
and
know,
he was
fam.
talking about. I don't know if I shared it with you or not, but he was talking about like I think 5 reasons why people won't take advice from you. And it
Mm,
was a very practical sermon, right? And I don't remember all the 5 points. When I find it, I'll pull it up. I'll share it with you. But essentially, what he was saying was like they're not ready to hear it. They're not at a place in their life where they're ready to hear it.
okay,
They're not ready to hear it from you.
right.
It's not for them.
That sounds
And it was
familiar.
two other major points, right? And it was two other major points. And I was like, that hit so much because going back again, I share that characteristic, wanting to share information with people and being bothered. Like, wait a minute, I said this to you 2 years ago. Why wasn't it relevant then? And I had to look inside myself and be like, hold on, like, what kind of problem do I have for this to be an issue for me? And I
Mm,
think I had to work on separating my ego from delivery of information, and we have to be careful about the intentions behind what we're doing, right? And so for you to say I post this and expect interaction is so proximal to saying, wanting love and feedback and all that stuff. Is like, okay, there's so much there, right? Like maybe you won't get it from a large population like Facebook. Maybe it's in a smaller circle.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
go where you're celebrated, not tolerated,
Is
right?
that yeah? Is that yeah,
And
yeah?
so many things to look into. But most of it is just like checking ourselves and seeing what our motivations are for
Yeah,
what
yeah,
we need.
absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. Go where you're appreciated and not tolerated, because that's actually the that's actually the tagline that I want to live by nowadays. I think I first heard Charlamagne say it somewhat, but then it goes back again, like Facebook being an example, because that's kind of like the main place that I met as far as like outside. Those who know me knows that, like, hey, I'm well reserved. I mean, I can be talkative. Like, I don't really like talking, surprisingly.
What? Stop.
Surprisingly, but I do like expressing myself. I like being open. I like being transparent. I like being available. It's just because, like I said, I think that's we have this God complex. Like when you mentioned, Darius Daniels, I do remember something similar to. I don't know if you sent it to me. I don't know if I
Yeah.
watched it on my own, because he's someone who I know you send me videos. I know I'm subscribed. I know I've seen videos of him on Facebook. I haven't really seen anything from him lately. Maybe I need to go on YouTube and actually look, because I am
Yeah, I
subscribed to.
haven't either because
I
that one's
am
old. That's a really old
yeah.
message.
I am subscribed to him, but and the point about, hey, when you said, hey, who do I think I am? It's like I told you this 2 years ago, and it's like we have this God complex, because again, it's like, hey, look, we all want to. Let me stop. I ain't gonna say we all want to, but it's like sometimes it's almost like, hey, like like I said, I don't know. For me, it's like we want to feel, or like I said, I want to feel like okay, look, I did something. Like going, shifting gears into contributions. You want to be, you want some type of credit or acknowledgement for like not even necessarily like being there, because a lot of times you might have heard the saying of saying, hey, who cares who sent the message, did you get the message? And sometimes it's like, well, I don't want people sitting here, giving all this high praise to somebody who didn't eat. Like if I know that I said this before, but again, maybe people don't want to hear from you because it's like maybe you're not on a certain status, maybe you're not on a certain level, maybe it's like it's because
whatever their values are, right? Like whatever they believe in.
Yeah, and
right?
I have.
Is the need to be recognized for contribution something that salvation can help us with? Is that something that we can be saved from?
Yeah, and I do have people I know personally who have expressed this. It's like, hey, nobody's gonna listen to somebody who, like, people like to see results. Like, people, you can be right, but they don't like me. I'm 34. Like, I'm talking about all this success and what I'm gonna have, and it's like, oh, I haven't got it yet, but it's like, well, it might take me a little longer, but it's part of manifestation sometimes. But it's still like people rather believe the person who, like, people like to you're gonna listen to someone who's making things happen than someone who didn't make it happen. Like, there's a lot of people who kind of really disregards the homeless man or the janitor because they're a janitor, and they're gonna listen to someone who's a CEO because it's like
and I'm so glad you said that, because my friend said the same thing to me. I've had this issue come up before, right? And I've had like until I reached a certain level in my life where other people would consider me successful. Some people didn't even regard what I was saying. Like, I had some friends who I felt were, whatever, we're the same. But then when I reached a certain level of success to other people, they're like, oh, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? I'm like, I'm still the same person. Right? And the other piece of what you were saying that I wanted to acknowledge is that's one thing I appreciate about the Christian faith, because it says that Jesus or God is not a respecter of persons.
Yeah.
And so it's like, just because we can't judge somebody by their station in life today, right? Like, you're a CEO, but you could be a terrible person.
Right.
Like, you're a janitor, but you could have been, whoever else in stature to the world. And that's what I don't understand about the world, but I think that's why we have to check ourselves and be like, people judge. They just do.
And it's interesting you said it, because I know you mentioned, because there's something else that you mentioned. This is just dropping a lot of jewels that you point out, right? Because this is the moment. We got you here on the podcast, right? So you would mention this all the time. Like, I used to tell you, like, hey, you seen my posts. People, I'm the positive one. I'm the deep dude, and it's like, well, what does deep get you? What, like, you say it all the time, but it's like sometimes,
depends on your audience.
Like, some people can be deep, but usually it's like the people who are looked at as deep and kind of like have some type of in depth, like you mentioned, like being shallow and stuff. As far as like shallow people, it's like, shallow people, they could probably be, guarded, but I think the benefit of having some type of thought-provoking personality, it's like you kind of consider other things. Like, but again, not everybody cares what you got going on, because you got your own stuff going on. I have family members like that. I have friends like that. They can, they probably mean well, but it's like they're doing what they're doing. Like, they gotta do what they gotta do, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But me, like, so I'm not a big people person, but I care about people. I believe in people maybe more than I should, but it's like, is that my gift or is that my curse? Because, like I said again, at the end of the day, we all gonna die. But it's like, if I don't want to sit here and leave this earth being remembered in a negative way.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that this came under the topic of contribution, right? Because what it makes me think about is preserving your energy. Because I've been back and forth, right? Giving too much, giving too little, giving too much, giving too little, and out of resentment, being like, well, I'm gonna pull back. And then I realized that if I'm not sharing what I consider to be my gift and what I know to be spiritual gifts, like I suffer,
Yeah.
right? And so what I think is prudent as a person who has these things to share that you believe are valuable to use a critical eye to assess where they need to go. When do I need to turn this on? Do I need to give this to everybody I meet? Even my personal circle, do I need to give it to them all the time? Because I used to be a person who would believe like, well, if it's your family or if it's your loved one or whatever, then they should be able to, tolerate me at full stream. And it's not true, right? I felt like love would bear all things, and I don't know if that's true when it comes to the human variety of love. Okay, like it's not. And so I said, well, I guess I have to like temper my expectations of people, number one, because like you said, some people just not here for depth and complexity, and they might be like, you sound crazy. Like, you might sound like a heretic. You might sound like the man on the corner with the Bible to them. You think you deep, and they be like, I ain't trying to hear all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it depends on what their values are, which we can assess. We don't know, and they can change from day to day. So that's why I feel like we have to, contribution, right? What is our contribution? Know what your gifts are, but still be able to protect your energy and be like, what instance can I use this in, right? Like, I don't think Jesus was turning water into wine at every party.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all right, I can do this here, right? This is necessary here, right now.
Yeah, and once again, it goes back again to, it's like nobody likes being checked. Nobody likes being corrected. This is a good example. Jehovah's Witness once said when I asked them, I always mention this in certain conversations, and it's like I was like, okay, when you talk about scriptures and the Bible and what God wanted, and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, it talks about hey, do not associate with wrongdoers and do not do witchcraft and all that stuff. Like you mentioned tarot reading, right? So that's not saying that it is non-existent, because again, it's like it never said it. The Bible never talks about it being non-existent. It didn't
like
even.
I just don't know.
And it
says
it's
a spiritual question.
It's a gift. Like tarot reading could be a gift, but when I just stay on point as far as like people being corrected and checked, it's like we can appreciate the lessons after. Like, because again, it's like, okay, if I'm out here drinking and smoking, I'm having a good time. Nobody wants a party pooper. No, like I used to be on the strip when I was in my 20s. I think there's been times where I used to talk to you about that. Like, sometimes I was on the weekends. Like we didn't talk as much then, but I remember like we used to talk. Like we me and my brothers and boys and stuff. We used to go on the strip like every weekend. Go to the strip, IHOP, all this stuff. There used to be a guy on the strip. I think it might have been. I don't want to say every weekend, but there was a guy. He was on the strip. He was standing on one of those little stools, talking about like with his little Bible, had his Bible yelling and stuff, and I think my brother was like, if looking at what he said something about if loving booty is wrong, I don't want to be here. Something that it's like it was just it was because he was just talking because like you out on the strip, you've been out Virginia Beach Strip before, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
and they got a lot like yeah, and they used to like have bars, clubs, spots, like just people just out here just having a good time. Nobody wants to be being like chastised and crucified for like going out here getting that thing. Now when you mentioned the water and the wine thing, a lot of people use that as an example. People talk about how God was hanging with Jesus was hanging out with prostitutes and he turned water into wine. That was kind of like their way of kind of justifying it, like saying it's okay if Jesus did it, but it's like, well, Jesus did it because he's a vessel, and it was like there's like everybody has a job, everybody has a position. Like you said, preserving your energy. Some people can't deal with liquor. Some people can't deal with heavy crowds. Like some people, just like the man on the stool. Some people can't deal with that. Some people might feel offended. Some people might feel attacked. So it's like, but I think experiencing it and knowing is okay. Like you do have to explore to figure out what your likes and dislikes are, because like we all grow. Some people, like I said, some people change, some people don't. I'm 34. There's still some things that I miss, some things that I still wish that I could do when I was in my 20s, but it's like what's worth it? What's worth more? Is it my well-being, my inner energy? Is it worth? Is it, it's worth more than just going out here having a good time and just out here get going on a freaknik, just trying to get a quick little squirrel trying to get a nut. You know what I mean? So it's like
not going on the freaknik.
but
Did you ever go to freaknik?
no, that's before my time.
That was too much for me. That was too much for me. I
before
said,
my
no.
before my time, but just as far as the contributions, it was that was just kind of like mainly like something that kind of came in my peripheral in regards to relationships and people because I have HBO Max, right?
Okay.
And
fancy out here?
You say what?
I say you fancy out here.
And so
right.
it's with my subscription. So I'm on HBO Max because I found out, I thought it was a movie, but it ain't. It was, I'm a Harry Potter fan. So then I go on my HBO Max account, and of course I have, my mom and my friend, they have accounts there, but they have they have their own profile there. But I think my profile is one being used. I don't think my mom even know how to use it. But I'm like, what is this? I see movies and shows on the thing. I'm like, wait, what is this? I was like, I said, who's on my, like, I forgot.
The algorithm.
I forgot about it. Like, so I'm like, who's watching this? I'm like, somebody's using, like, somebody who I let use my profile might have, like, probably looking at it, something. I'm like, this is it. So I'm like, this is me. This goes again, contribution and possession. I don't care if you still have my information. Like, you bet, like, I don't want no other nigga using my stuff. Like, it's like if this was from a previous relationship.
Like a big jump.
Hold on, wait, no. If this is from a previous relationship, right? If I'm going on my profile, because I don't go there that much, but if I'm going on my profile and I see something that's like out of line, I'm like, okay, somebody's on my page, like somebody's on my profile. So I'm like I don't care because again, it's like I see stuff.
You gotta say what kind of stuff is out of line, like what you mean? Like, at first they was watching like Lifetime movies, then they start watching like, I don't know, WWE. Like, what you mean?
No, I don't want to jump to conclusion, but I'm just sitting here thinking. I'm like, okay, I know some people. I let some people use my profile, and I don't know all who has access to it. Because again, like, some people be because again, it's like if I got a Netflix account and then I let my friend use it, and then they might have a friend or somebody who they talking to use that because they say, "Oh, I have the password, I have this," and I'm like, okay, this is okay. I'm like, okay, I don't, because it goes back into salvation, possession, contribution. These are the three words I was telling you about. It's like all that stuff correlates with everything because it's like going back.
Make sure Netflix know that we contributing these payments to their account.
Because the thing about it is, I don't, like, again, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. Like, talk about, again, being a good friend, being a good person, but it's also about, okay, I can be selfish too, because it's like if like, say if me and you have a falling out, we friends, and then like we have a falling out, and then like, but you had access to my password or something, and then like we ain't, like, maybe we not talking anymore, but it ain't no hard feelings, like we still cool, but we just not on that level. And I'm like okay, you letting somebody use my password? I'm like, hold on, because for me, look, I don't want to be. It goes back into being acknowledged. I tell you all the time about sometimes being taken advantage of. Sometimes, like, if it's like I don't never really hear from certain people unless they want something. So it's like if you're like, so say for example, I sit here and say if my friend needs me to give them a ride, or they need money, or they need to borrow a ride, like if it's a woman in particular, and they got a man, and I'm like, wait, hold on, you got a man, or you dealing with somebody else? You need to go to them. You need to run to them and do that. Don't sit here and use me when you got a whole dude right here.
But why does that cancel? No. Why does that cancel your need to be helpful? Why does them being partner or not cancel out your desire to be like, oh, I want to be helpful. I want to help people. I want to contribute. What happens to your contributions since they're in a relationship versus when they're not?
Because sometimes it goes back again to like as far as like, okay, am I only useful when this like don't like I don't want to be the last choice, you know what I mean? I don't want to be like the end of like sometimes I want to be the first choice even if I can't help. Like I said, go back again. I can be a little I can't always explain it, but it's
I
like
don't know about this part.
it's like hey, if
I don't know about this.
like if I'm dealing with like if I don't talk to you on a like I ain't gonna say talk to you on regular, but if you don't be reaching out to me and you only contact me when you need something, and I sometimes feel like I don't always feel that way, but it's like oh, you put me on the back burner for somebody else, or put me on the back burner for this person, but now this person isn't available to you. You're gonna come to me. It's like, nah, I don't do that. So it's just an example. So it's like, you know, so, because again, I tell you, I'll be humble sometimes. I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I'm a prophet. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm a prophet, but I do sometimes. I be like, it's almost like I can sense it. Like when I sense that something is going on, like something is kind of like I have to like because again, I tell you, I was wrong. I went in my ex-wife's phone.
Oh,
That's how I found out about the whole thing. But it's like, you know, I felt it in my spirit. You know what I mean? When I was telling you about my
I mean, you
other.
might just be intuitive. Like, you might just have, like, you might just be intuitive, which is okay. But we also have to be careful with that gift, too, because that can lead you down the wrong path.
Exactly.
Like, if you're intuitive and broken, or you're intuitive and hurt, that's going to put you in a whole different place than if you're intuitive and healthy.
And I'm glad you said that. Because again, I'm glad you said that because here's the thing, and it goes back again to going back to again to history. When we like you've been in relationships, it's like I've been in relationships. After a while, you just say I'm tired. Sometimes that pain. Sometimes there's a reason why it says okay when God tells us forget it. Maybe there's a reason why that being hurt matters so much because do our pain and trauma help us make better decisions or does it help us
Hopefully.
make worse decisions? Because again, how do you know? Like how do you learn if you don't like how do you learn from this? Like this is intuitive can be a curse too because sometimes we can probably think this is going on, but it's really not. But then it's also like, okay, why did this come to mind in the first place? Am I having a recollection of something that happened before, or is it just really something that's a warning? You know what I mean?
And that's why I believe at some point in everybody's life, I feel like everybody gets sat down. Like I feel like the pain that you encounter, the hurt feelings that you encounter, at some point in your life, you're gonna get sat down. And how you respond to that, or the path of your life after that, depends on how you respond to it. Right? It depends on your decision making, which depends on your experiences up until that point, related to whatever degree of mental health you're working with, related to whatever example you choose to follow. But everybody's going to get sat down at some point by their pain, and then there's a fork in the road. Right? Just like we see the stereotypical example, like, the sitcoms or whatever, they'll say, oh, well, somebody got their heart broken, so now they're going down, like, whole road, versus somebody who got their heart broken, and now they're single forever. Right? And those are extreme, obviously. But I think, like, whatever we choose is really dependent on how we're doing at that time. And I think that's when your intuition, the universe, God, your soul, your spirit comes in and speaks to you. And you can choose to acknowledge it or you can choose to not.
That is something relative to what I said in my group chat, with my family, with my brother and my cousin. It's like certain things where it's like staying on relationships. People, we know that this is a new generation. People have different experiences. We know that there are people out here that might rush into certain things. Some people in here that's not really thinking like, but it's like I say, I choose to look at the positive things. Like if I feel like, okay, this person been in multiple relationships. They just every relationship they're in it turns into like them being abused but I'm still going to get in a relationship with this person because I believe in the end all goal. and or even with business.
And
None
what's the end all goal?
the end all goal is, hey, like happiness, marriage, like
Oh, I
whatever the
see.
goal is. So it's like some people might not want to be in relationships because they feel like everybody cheat because
Right.
they probably been the person that they was being cheated with. So and
Yeah.
that's how
Or
some
they don't have the same end goal.
yeah. So it's and that's the thing. It's like we going back again to that other part in Philippians. Work out your own salvation. Sometimes we have to make judgments not based on what we know or see, but sometimes based on what we feel. I think our feelings
Yeah.
are just as important as what we know because again, like somebody has to lead by example, right? Somebody has to take the stance and be like, you know what? I believe in love. I believe in conquer. I believe in winning. Everybody's not kings. Everybody's not queens, but I do feel like where I do feel like with dedication and patience, anything's possible. That might
Yeah,
be a
that's real aspirational. That's real pie in the sky. But I hear you though. Yeah. But that goes back to what we talked about before, right? Like you can't measure what's in somebody else's cup. Like we don't know what characteristics their life has given them. And also going back to that example that you used, we say, well, everybody I've been with has cheated on me. It's like, well, you could think that you've learned from that situation, and you could be like, oh, well, everybody been with who's cheated on me has had kids, so I'm not going to date somebody with kids anymore. But it might not have been the kids that were a problem. It could have been the fact that, this person has certain attributes to their character that you keep choosing that you don't recognize. Like, we from the outside looking in, you can be like, dang, why did they learn this? Why they keep doing this? But we don't know where somebody's attention is. We don't know what their value is. We don't know what's in their cup. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't measure any of that.
yeah. It's kind of interesting because I think I told you about this when I was in training when I was in HVAC training. The guy that was he ended up leaving before I did. He kind of betted against me. He was probably one of the can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
He was probably one of the fewer one of the guys who I felt like was gonna make it to the end. But he was like a military guy. He was like 37, but I said something, and I was like, if you can see it, if you believe it, you can achieve it. And then he was like, that's not true, right? And then I was just like, I shrugged my shoulders, like, I mean, it is. And I don't know what everybody else said, but they had said, some other people said something, and then he kind of looked, he said, man, y'all some positive, inspirational motherfuckers or whatever. And then I was just like, and like I said, but this is a guy who was, he was in the military, from what he said, he was in, he's been here, he kind of been around the world. Been in the military, being an older guy, sometimes you kind of look at it and be like, okay, you can respect somebody who's been in the military who have experience like that. So, like me, I'm only going based on my faith, you know what I'm saying? So it goes back again to saying, like, sometimes all we have is our faith. So
yeah, and we can't. That's why we can't take somebody else's worldview because he might have had some things that he aspired to that he got knocked down about. And that's that fork in the road, right?
Yeah.
He got sat down. That's where he picked up his opinion and his denial of the opposite. And, your experience might have been like, well, I know if I believe, then my life turns out like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting. And that's why I just feel like it's so challenging when we start to speak on other people's lives and we start to speak on other people's experiences and even offering advice, right? I think we just have to be so careful about finding our edges and protecting that space because we don't know where the other person is coming from. So we have no idea. You know what I mean? We speak in the same language. We can have the same skin. We can have the same gender, assigned gender. Like we come from the same neighborhood and be two totally different people.
Yeah, the same house. That's how.
That's real.
That's how me and my brothers and sisters are. Like we all came from the same upbringing. I mean, my sister's a little bit older than I am. She's So I'm not gonna tell her how old. So I'm not gonna say how old she.
Don't do that.
I'm gonna have her and her husband on the podcast soon, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But we got the same mom, and our dad, me and my brother's dad, helped raise her. That's still daddy to her, but at the same time, it's like my mom and my dad. I tell my mom and dad all the time. I say, y'all did a great job. I think sometimes my mom was like, I said, "What?" I know my mom probably thinks she don't know what's going on with me sometimes because it's like I be like, my mom is my mom. So sometimes when I say like do stuff like whether it's me making a big purchase like maybe buying a car or getting an apartment like even here like when I moved in here I was like, did I do all right? Did I do good, man? You like that? Because again, I made I didn't like, get like, cause my mom would always tell me, maybe because she knows like some of my spending habits and stuff. You don't want to get nothing too much. That's too much that you can get. Always like if you're gonna leave a job, you gotta have something else. It's always kind of like not negative, but it's like, all right, it can be disheartening sometimes. Cause I'm like, Mom, you gotta trust me. You gotta trust me because it's like, again, as a parent, sometimes, especially when I used to ask my mom for money all the time. I mean, it's been a while since I asked her. I think since I've been here, I haven't asked her, but she helps me out.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes maybe again, like I said, sometimes maybe I do be reaching a little bit when I make decisions because I want to do something, but it might not always be the best decision in other people's eyes because
yeah, but it's still your own to make, right? Like it's your own path. And I think speaking of contribution, one thing I'm curious about, do you think your contributions as a parent or your relationship with your own parent have changed since you've become one?
Hold on. Ask me that again.
Do you think since we're loosely talking about contributions, do you think that what you plan to contribute to society and to your son and as a parent have changed since you had a child, or has your relationship with your parents changed since you had a child?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know because sometimes I ask my parents for advice as far as with him, and then it's probably because again I'm co-parenting and my parents who have co-parent, I might ask them as far as like hey, what can I do, or like what are some like I ask them about myself growing up because of my son, because like I said, my son he has ADHD and he hasn't been back to school yet. He goes back tomorrow, and since he's been on the medication, his teacher has she was out, so we're gonna find out. I think she's back in school now, so we're gonna find out how that medicine actually been working because it was almost like as every day he was getting on yellow and red, but I think he ended up taking his he took his he got his medication, and I think that first week since his medication, he had a substitute. I think he had a substitute for like a whole week. So he was like, I'm on green. So I don't think the substitute was actually, the substitute was actually, putting them on, like changing their points. But, my ex-wife haven't really said much about him not listening at home. So I think it does because they actually upped his dose. Okay. So now he's doing 10. So he's doing 10 milligrams. But she said it makes him sleepy after it wears off, and then sometimes it takes away his appetite. But I'm just like for me as a parent, and the way that my parents raised me, it's still a lot of it's like still a lot of learning and unlearning because again I don't want to project certain things on him because again me being the way that I am, like my parents, like I don't agree with my parents all the time. I might disagree with them more than I do agree with them, especially now that I'm older. Like I'm still kind of like on that fence of like, okay, look, I believe that God is going to work it out. Like I might have some bad spending habits or might have some bad opinions on things on how I raised my son or whatever otherwise, but I believe in God working it out. That's kind of how I live my life. God is going to work it out. I try not to be dwelling in any, try to dwell too much, but I don't want to project my issues on my son. And I think sometimes that's where it can, sometimes my ex-wife we can collide. Because again, she's You know, she's in a whole relationship and she has other children, and but I just have my son, and even though I love my stepdaughter like my own, like I said, we our relationship hasn't been like that close since since me and my ex-wife separated. But like I said, my son is still my
Right.
priority, so it's different. So I do want to like I said, I want to be the best dad that I can be. But like I said again, I'm not. I probably won't ever know how good of a parent I was until my son is old enough to really acknowledge or recognize, like kind of like understand more as far as like okay, because again, like my parents would say, "Oh, he's young, he's not gonna remember." So because I tell you I expressed you to a lot of times about, again, this goes back to possession. I know there's more. I know there's more to me. I know there's more outside of where I'm at. Virginia's home. I love Virginia, but it's like sometimes I'll be like, man, I want to leave. And we had this conversation before, and it's like, my ex-wife is very supportive of that, but then it's like, I'm already like, my son been sick. I haven't had my son in a little bit, so it's like, I get him tomorrow. I can't wait when I get off. I'm gonna get him, I hug him and stuff. Like, I actually got a home COVID test that I'm gonna probably take tomorrow, but
Okay.
my thing is, just to kind of answer the question, because I kind of started getting a bit, little bit more in depth with it. 'Cause like, so when it comes to, it used to be God and music. Now it's like God, music, and my son. Like whenever my son comes up, like I get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more sensitive and oversharing, as you were saying earlier. But that's just because like I take a lot of pride in that. So that's why I say I don't know. I don't even. I'm trying. I don't remember. I don't even know if I asked my parents or not if they wanted to be parents or not. Because I think I might have did or I might have. But if I did, I probably forgot what they said. But I'm a proud father,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
and even though
that's something to be said about it.
I'm not probably as present as I would like to be, and maybe partially, maybe majority of that is really up to me because I can see him every day. Like Mom said, sometimes it just be late because of my work schedule. But it's just like man, like I like, and that's the thing. Sometimes it's like when I say feeling, like I love my son to death. I love him, but then it goes back again to like do me just saying that and feeling that is that really good enough? And it's like I don't know. That's why I be like sometimes I feel like I need to do more, but it's like I don't
I
I
think
don't.
the fact that you asked in and of itself indicates that you are in like a good place, right? I don't
Mm,
have children. Children are not in my mind. Children are not on my radar. But I think the fact that you even have a level of concern of like, oh wow, like, am I doing this right? Am I doing okay? You know what I mean? I think that speaks to you even trying, right? That speaks to your level of care and concern. So
yeah,
I
and
mean,
that
like you said, you won't know until he tells you what kind of parent you were for him. But in
yeah
general, it sounds like overall, you at least care enough to be doing the best that you can.
yeah because that's the thing. Like how like I mean you know being a parent like besides take like taking care of your responsibility and raising your children the way like how much like that never really came, like I never heard anybody talk about as far as like questioning it like were they a good parent, did they do right, like they just say okay I'm gonna take care of my responsibility, but it's like do they, like people really care about being good parents, or do they just know like okay I need to take
Yeah,
care of my responsibility?
yeah, I've heard it
So
before. But to be honest with you, and since we're friends, I know we're sharing it with with your audience. But I'm gonna keep it all the way real. I think there's a variable demographic in terms of the majority of parents that I have seen who express more concern versus the ones who are more dutiful parents. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think in certain communities, if you're talking about demographics, right, like social, ethnic to a certain degree, I
mm,
think there's a difference in when you bring children into the world and how you regard those children. Now, is that the end all be all? Absolutely not. There's no absolute. But I'm going to tell you, like I think that there were more of um, children that were not in the community that I grew up in who had parents like that. Right, like
Yeah.
most of the parents in my community were on the same page. Oh, we gotta do this for these kids. Oh, we gotta do it. I gotta go to it for these kids. And I'm like, yeah, in and of itself, that's a certain type of love. But wondering, hey, like, am I doing okay? Is my kid emotionally supported? Does my kid feel okay? A lot of parents just don't go there. I've seen it though, but
Yeah.
it's not common.
Yeah, and I think I mean everybody said everybody who are parents, I mean, again, it could have been something they just stumbled upon because and I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest with y'all blessed ones, listeners, everyone listening. It's like, you know, if one thing is, look, I'm all for. I'm a big supporter of. Well, yeah, I'm a big supporter of one night stands, right? Sometimes you hit it off with somebody you love. You might like somebody really much. So sometimes you might just be feeling it. Energy is energy. Yeah, it's soul ties. But here's one thing: the worst thing to be, and I'm just thank God that my son isn't this. But the worst thing I ain't gonna say the worst thing to be, but the worst thing that I would hate is to have a child with somebody who I just met, you know what I mean, just knew in the day, and because again, it's like that puts a lot of, just imagine, like, because again, there's already parents, mothers, and women who has children who are not really there for their children, and they have a relationship, but it's almost like, okay, if you was just because I'm gonna be honest, there are exceptions, but just from thankfully I don't know anybody personally who is like that I know of, but there are people who base their relationships on their children with their counterpart.
What do you mean?
Just as far as like okay, look, you ain't talking to the mama, you ain't talking to your children.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's like, man, that's like, I feel terrible, and it goes back into me again. I cannot know these people, but it's like, man, I feel bad for the woman, and I feel bad for the children, and even if it's vice versa. But here it goes back again. Here it goes back again to where I have that possession and salvation complex, and it's like, again, I don't. Nobody's gonna, like, not everybody knows that, hey, this is gonna happen, but it's like, man, how could you just do that? Why would you be like, why would you deal with somebody like that? Like, I don't know if everybody don't know the type of people that they're dealing with, but it's almost like inevitable. Like, just going back again to what I see, you can be in a relationship with somebody all happy and excited, but then as soon as y'all have kids and like a couple months later, you got a baby. Next thing you know, y'all broken up, and all this time. So I'm like, man, it's kind of wild. Like, you find out somebody's true colors after you have a child with them. It's just kind of like, it's just sad, and it's like, I can't. Sometimes almost like I blame the man just as much as I blame the woman for it. That's why I just take so much seriousness in even being a parent, because it's like, man, me and my ex-wife don't always agree on things, but she does respect the fact that I love my son, and she would never like I said, she even offered, she even like said, it's not like I'm always asking for him. Sometimes she'll even let me get him. Like I said, I do the best I can, but I know as I progress in life, that's how I'm gonna progress as a father. The more free time that I get, that the more time I'm gonna make for him. The more successful I get, that's the more time I'm gonna be like include him in things, because like I said, I can't always get him. So to all the women, the men out here listening, and I know you said, even for yourself, you don't want You said kids are not on your radar. I mean, I know you have family who are you love and care about, but just you personally. But I'm gonna tell everybody who's listening, you know, please, like, if you don't want kids right now, and if you don't want these issues, if you don't want this baby mama or baby daddy drama, if you don't want child support, if you don't want to deal with these type of issues, please wait until you. Not everybody believe in marriage, but please just take these steps with somebody that you care and love about. That's why I say
a partner.
yeah, you take it like take sex a little bit more serious. Take unprotected sex a little bit more seriously, because if you're not gonna if you have a child, you're just not gonna have a child. You're gonna have a soul tie, and then you're gonna, because at the end of the day, yeah, people gonna change. Some people aren't ready to be parents yet, but I'm gonna tell you, like, you do not want women. The way that women tell me that their pregnancy go, it's not pleasant. So please, ladies, like, dick ain't worth it. Good dick ain't worth it to be going through this by yourself, going through this like that, and men, hey, you better find some porn and masturbate, because you don't want those problems and evil. It's not easy, like, co-parenting, even if you do have a good relationship. I mean, my ex-wife have a good relationship, we co-parenting, but if you like me and you want to be a parent, you gotta work, but you can't always be there. So have somebody who you will be able to have a partner with, a lifetime with. I had a failed marriage, but that doesn't mean I had a failed. I'm a failed parent. However, if I would have had my son 5 years prior, it probably would have been a lot worse. But that's that.
Yeah, I hear you, friend.
But like I said, that was just kind of like answer the question again. I don't know. I do feel like I just don't want to project mine. I don't want to do what my parents did. Not. I'm not. They didn't even really do anything, but it's like I don't want to, like, kind of like be I don't want to kind of just be like. I don't want to be one of them parents that tell my son, you know. I want my son to be able to do what he loves. That's why I want to put myself in a position while he's still young, to where he don't have to work places that he don't want to work at. I want to kind of put my son in a head where, if he does, like, he's going to learn how to hard work, but I want him to be able to still come to me, because my parents, like I said, they raised me good, but it's like, I don't know if I learned everything that I probably could have learned. Maybe because of, I don't know if it has a lot to do with faith, but I mean, again, I can't be, I don't want to be too much, but I wish I would have knew more. But like I said, sometimes with the maybe the faith base, maybe, like I said, my parents ain't I mean, we had sex talk, we had disciplinary and stuff, but we didn't have, like, again, maybe a lot of people of my generation didn't learn this. Like, we didn't have that talk about, what mental health, what I mean, like, how much trauma one can do. Like, I might have dealt with some trauma when my parents separated, but maybe they didn't know. So that's why I say I don't really put my whole blame on them. Maybe it's just like, again, we teach what we know. So
yeah,
whether it's right or wrong. But I know we had been, expressing and sharing some things. What are some things that, you have been reserving? I know with the new year, and, getting ready to transition into, your like how you do your spring cleaning. You was expressing to me before off the record, your spring cleaning, like you're doing your what's the word? Readjusting, I guess you can say readjustment. Like, what are
Hmm.
some things that what are some revelations that you have been having this past, like, since the new year has started?
Wow, I mean, so many. Like, I think we started off talking a little bit about doing some of that, turning over that soil, right? Like, unearthing those things that make you have patterns of behavior that may not be productive or may not be adding to your life. There was, I saw this quote on Instagram, and I don't remember who it was from, and let's see if I can pull it up. But essentially, the person asked the audience, what stories are you telling yourself, for good or for bad, that inform your behavior? And for me, it's important to look into that and say, hey, what am I believing? What do I believe about life? What do I believe about myself that's informing my behavior?
You said reforming?
Informing.
Oh,
So what is
informing.
it that you
Okay.
believe that's guiding you to make the choices that you make in your day to day, right? Whether conscious or subconscious. So I think it's important to do some work there. Yeah, here it is. It's Ren Sean. He said, "What story in your mind and body drives your behavior?" And I think that's a real question to ask. So that's one thing. I think also forgiveness, right? Learning how to forgive myself, learning how to forgive other people has been really big.
Okay.
And then working on physical wellness, that's not, I realize that's not something that I've made a priority before. A lot of times we talk about that, I want to change my body in this way, I want to change my body in that way. But in terms of actually focusing on physical wellness and saying, what do I need individually, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, those are all the things that I've been focusing on. Do you
Okay.
have some? Do you have, I guess it's not resolutions. I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but
Yeah. Being, like I said, just reassurance and reconfirmation. Go where you're appreciated, not tolerated. I really feel more confident, and when dealing with people, I don't. I'm still like, so I'm still not like gonna be like up and be like, hey, go snap on people, but like I appreciate those more, like appreciate the people more who actually make time, and I make it clear, like I was telling someone I was been involved with, was like, as far as like how much I appreciated them for being there, holding it down. We have our ups and downs, but it's like, at least I have that. I know that I'm appreciated. Like, and that's the thing. Like I said, sometimes I give, because again, I understand, and because of my care and my concern, my care and my understanding, like, I can, I do acknowledge that people go through things, and like I said again, I can be, again, like, I'll take a look at myself, like, yeah, maybe I am a little bit of a jackass or something, and I have my ways, and people put up with me as much as I put up with them. But it's like I have to really acknowledge that, like, thank God that it's like, hey, if I die tomorrow, what like, it's almost like, man, if I die tomorrow, would I care more about the people who don't show up, or those who did? And I was like, because again, it goes back again to like saying, like, hey, look, and I tell you about how I used to be on this verge of, you know, maybe I might have a crush, or maybe I might want to do something, but it's not, sometimes things don't work in my favor, and it's always about, okay, we all have our preference. So sometimes I'm not somebody's preference, and then the people who I'm preference is to somebody who I'm their preference. But it's almost like, okay, sometimes it's like people who like you might not like, and those who you like might not like you. So it's like, is that karma? But I'm really realizing that I'm like, okay, I'm maturing enough now to be like, I don't really like, I don't care anymore. Like, I like those who aren't able to give me that love and appreciation, that care and that acceptance, even whether it's regarding the work, whether regarding relationships, whether regarding anything else. It's like I have to not deal with it, but I just have to know that hey, this is this it's a reason. Maybe because I'm being because again, as much as I don't like shallow people, I too have been shallow. So it's like this is my karma. So it's like I'm learning to like look really learn how to be more. I'm more mature in my understanding of things, and like I said, like my contributions doesn't always mean that, or someone else's contributions don't always mean that they like I am owed or they are owed my um salvation. Because like I said, that was another thing that we talked about before, where it's like how long before we can let go? Because again, you help somebody. Like, do you ever help somebody and you might have felt like that? No. Have somebody ever helped you and you might have felt like that you owed them for like forever because they always looked out of something? Like,
I mean, I don't know if I would say forever, but I have felt like, I wanted to repay them. Or I had enough gratitude to be like, okay, I want to give back, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I think some of that has to do with, are you okay accepting an offering or gift from a person without having to return something, right? Like, can you be appreciative without feeling like you have to give back? But the concept, yeah, I understand what you mean, for sure.
Yeah, because that was just kind of me. That was part of the reason what my salvation, why I said salvation, possession, and contribution. Because it goes back again to, I give a lot, but people also helps me. But it's almost like, man, I don't want to turn my back on somebody who helped me, and I don't want nobody to, and I don't want nobody to turn it back on me when I help them. But it's like, how long are we owed? Like, how long do we owe them our energy? Because again, we all grow. We all like sometimes the time has run out. Like it's almost like, okay, this was everything serves a purpose, and that's one thing that I'm trying to get like trying to remember and to keep in mind. Like everything serves a purpose. Like we can be there for people. We can be giving and loving and forgiving, but that doesn't mean that it's intended for it to be like where we're supposed to, like we're indebted to them for a lifetime. You know what I mean?
It should be. I don't think that should be the case because that can turn into like an unhealthy dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And that's I think that's also a boundaries thing. It's like, okay, where if you feel like you need to pay them back or you need to return the favor, where does that end?
Yeah,
that's something I've struggled with in the past, depending on the value of what they've given me. But then going back could have been life changing for you. Or something that they do, they could have been like, oh, that's just what I always do. You know what I mean? So it's that's why we can't determine what they have going on or what their values are. But we can say, okay, I'm worth having received this gift. And if you feel you need to reciprocate, okay, this is where I feel I've reciprocated, and now I can move on.
Right, and that's why I always appreciate when you just always say, hey, you're doing your spring clean, because it's like we kind of, there's people who grow apart and there's people who grow together. So it's like you keep me on my toes where it's like, okay, like if I was one of those people who wasn't, trying to be a better person, trying to like be a better person every day, so who knows how long our friendship would have been. Because like I said, there's been people like I knew, like I've been, like I know a lot of people who's been, like I know some good people. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that we're still friends. Like, and like, I always used to acknowledge a lot of people as my friends because hey, once friends, always friends. But it's like, I mean, friends are forever. But it's still like, okay, maybe during that time, and I think, we have, me and you, we have we have grown together to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, it's not, it's kind of like, sure, at this time, it's like, I don't even know how long we know each other. I know it's been like over 10 years, but it's almost like,
right.
We have been, we kind of, we feed off each other sometimes where it's like, okay, I might give you something intriguing or something interesting to, kind of reflect on the same thing for myself, what you do. And that's why I
Yeah.
say, and that's why I say I take so much pride in being a good friend, because it's like, again, I would want, like I said, like, I don't have a lot of views in my life, and it's like that. But again, I try to inspire to be at least the best friend to somebody else, because I know that I'm not always right, but I might come off that way because I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm just gonna say anything useful. Yeah, I'm gonna joke around. Sometimes I might joke around with you. We might play around and stuff, but at the same time is, and when it's something serious, like, well, then this is just speaking, and generally, this is just speaking, and generally, we have this, uh, we have this type of relationship where it's always going to be uplifting, and it can only go up because we grew together. Like, there's some people who was just kind of like seasonal, because, like I told you again, when I used to be in my 20s, hey, we used to go out and hang out on the strip and do all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, we were doing that now, but now I'm a father now. I got jobs. I mean, I had jobs before, but I have different responsibilities. So it's like, it's not like, it's because there's some childhood friends that you have that you grew up with that are no longer within that realm that you might be moving to because of the path that we go. Not saying that it would be any hard feelings or any issues, but it's like you have you have something else going on. Like my some people I knew like some people I knew in middle school. I mean, thankfully for me, I always had a small circle, so I have a handful of friends, and a lot of them, like I said, we've been, like I said, my brothers. We know each other for 20 plus years. We don't communicate every day, but it's always like, okay, it's always been solid. But I know that I do also have those use some of those use, or like you've been an example of saying, okay, I know the type of friend like that I have that is everlasting. Like with my like me and my ex-wife, I would all like my door is always open for us to be friends because we're co-parenting. Now that's just for me, because again, I feel like we have to have a relationship like that. I don't know where she stands with it, but my door is always open for that, because again, we're co-parenting. Whatever affects her affects me, and whatever affects me will probably affect her, because again, this because we have a child together. So
And maybe that's the answer to it, right? What you're saying actually brings up an interesting concept, because I think about my long-term friendships, which I also have a very small circle, and you said it's because we kind of contribute to each other's growth. I wonder if that's what you have to have in common for a relationship to continue to progress. You have to have some growing element between the two of you, whether you two are growing as individuals or you're growing a child, right? Like, you're something in between you is growing. That means that relationship is sustainable. That doesn't guarantee it, but I wonder if that's a critical element, because that's present in my other strong relationships as well, which again are very few. But two things. One, I don't think you have to contribute the same. I don't think you have to contribute mirroring elements for the relationship to progress. For example, you could be still growing your, say for instance, I add information and you add support, and vice versa. We don't always have to be adding the same things for there to be growth happening. And then in terms of parenting, right, I'm not a parent, so this is from the outside looking in. But it seems like if you both are you both love the child and you're both contributing to that child's progression, then that's also a binding element of growth that keeps you together. Because my other closest friendship is about the same length of time as yours and mine, and we have the same thing. We talk about different books that we've read. We're open to changing our minds about things. We're open to hearing the other person's experiences. And I've never thought about that as being what has tied us together for so long until you mentioned it. And then you think about, in contrast, some of these relationships that don't last. What do they have in common? It's usually because maybe you met at the same place, or you worked at the same place, so you were friends for how long you were there,
proximity.
or maybe maybe you had the same job, whatever. It's some limiting factor. You're not growing together. The situation has been outgrown.
Yeah, it goes back into proximity, and you I think you
But does
mentioned.
it though? Because we're not proximal.
You said what?
I said, does it though? Because we're not proximal.
When you talk about as far as like why these things lasted long or why it didn't, because again, some relationships was off the strength of other people. Some relationships was off the strength of the interest. Remember, like how you mentioned before, like some friends might just be good for like hey, we like for a drink, maybe for a ride to the airport. So
Mm-hmm.
after you grow and you might not be that same person like that goes out to the club or some that same person that might be into like, and that's why I say I think even with marriage is probably one of the most sacred things because that's something that you would have to really build and grow with that person on a consistent basis, and that's actually another thing which I got your message, but we mentioned the Megan Good and Devin Franklin before marriage, but you know, again, this is still they're still in the entertainment industry, so maybe they only want to share, but so much, they don't want to get too much in detail. They can still have a good relationship, but it's like maybe the marriage is something like that. It could be like, all right, you know,
Yeah, no.
they
We don't know
grew,
any elements of their personal relationship.
yeah,
Like, none of them.
and as much as we can admire them or respect them, it's like that's the thing about today's society now, where it's like the celebrity. We have social media and then we have celebrities, but we want to get personable with them, um, and it's because of the thrill of knowing. Like we all, like I said, we all have this God complex sometimes. Like we want to know everything so we can share. Like we all have something to say. We all have something to talk about. We all want to be heard. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I feel like we all want to. We all have. I do have a feeling. I do believe that everybody wants to at least, you know, be acknowledged for something. So it's like, you know, but you gotta mind the business that pays you. Work out your own salvation because you gotta again go where you're appreciated, not tolerated. Not everybody cares what you got going on.
Yes, definitely.